Chief Oba was a man who had everything money could buy. His houses shone with bright lights, his cars filled the driveway, and his workers obeyed every command. But inside his heart, he sometimes felt that something was missing, though he never admitted it. His only daughter, Amora, lived in the middle of all this wealth, yet she often looked lonely. She had many toys, many books, and even private teachers, but her eyes always looked empty, as if she wanted something more than all the gifts her father gave her. One afternoon, the sun was warm over Lagos, and Chief Oba decided to take a quiet walk in his garden. The flowers were in full bloom, the air smelled fresh, and the birds sang softly. As he walked slowly along the stone path, his eyes caught a strange sight. He stopped, confused, and looked again. There, under the shade of a mango tree, sat his little daughter, Amora. She was not playing with her toys, nor reading the expensive books her teachers gave her. Instead, she was sitting on the grass with a girl who looked very poor. The girl's clothes were torn, her slippers were worn out, and her hair was rough and untidy. She held small pieces of torn paper in her hands. Amora was smiling as the poor girl pointed to the letters on the paper. The girl was showing Amora how to sound out words, how to join letters, and how to write slowly with a small piece of pencil. Amora's eyes were bright with joy, the kind of joy her father had not seen in a long time. Chief Oba's heart skipped a beat. He stood still, hidden behind a tree, watching. He could not believe what he was seeing. His rich daughter, who had every book in her room, was learning from a girl who had nothing. He wondered, who is this girl? How can she teach my daughter? The girl's name was Amina. She had no home. She slept on the street near the market and survived by helping traders carry goods. Yet, she was clever. Amina had once gone to school for a short time before her parents died, and even though she could not continue, she never forgot what she learned. She carried pieces of paper she found on the road, reading them again and again until the words became clear in her mind. Now, sitting in the garden of one of the richest men in Lagos, Amina used those same torn papers to help Amora read. She was patient, kind, and gentle. Every mistake Amora made, Amina corrected softly, never laughing or mocking her. Chief Oba felt something strange inside him. His face showed surprise, but his heart felt a mix of confusion and shame. For all his wealth, for all the teachers he had paid, none of them had made his daughter's eyes shine the way they did now. It was this poor homeless girl, sitting on the grass with torn paper, who brought that light to Amora's face. He thought of interrupting them, of asking the guards to chase Amina away. But something in him told him to stay silent. So, he stood quietly, hidden behind the tree, just watching. His mind was full of questions. How could this poor girl know how to teach? Why would my daughter prefer her company to all the expensive teachers I hired? What is so special about her? Amora clapped her hands with joy when she wrote her name correctly on the paper. Look, Amina. I did it, she shouted with excitement. Amina smiled widely, her eyes bright with pride. Yes, Amora, you are learning fast. You are very smart. Chief Oba felt his chest tighten. Those words, so simple, carried more warmth than anything his daughter's private teachers had ever given her. He realized that Amora did not only want to learn, she wanted someone to sit with her, to guide her with patience, to share kindness. The rich man's steps grew heavy as he stood there, thinking. For the first time, he saw that his money could not give his daughter what she truly needed. The scene in front of him was something money could never buy: friendship, patience, and love. Still, he said nothing. He turned slowly and walked back toward his house, his thoughts deep and unsettled. He knew this moment was only the beginning of something bigger, something that would soon change his heart and the lives of those around him. But for now, he left the two girls under the mango tree, one rich, one poor, both smiling over torn papers that carried lessons far beyond reading and writing. That evening, the golden light of the sunset poured through the wide windows of Chief Oba's grand house. He sat quietly in his large chair, still thinking about what he had seen in the garden. His daughter, Amora, learning with a girl who had nothing. His mind replayed the sight again and again, the torn paper, the broken pencil, the laughter, the joy. After dinner, Oba called Amora to his side. He spoke gently, trying to hide the questions that pressed against his chest. My daughter, he asked, who is that girl you were sitting with today? The one under the mango tree. Amora's eyes lit up at once. That is Amina, Papa. She comes to the gate almost every day. She tells me stories, and she teaches me words. She is very kind. She never laughs at me when I make a mistake. Oba raised his brows. She comes every day? Amora nodded quickly. Yes, Papa. At first, I only talked to her. She told me stories about her life, about her school when she was younger, and about the stars and the rivers. Then one day, she brought some pieces of paper and showed me letters. She said she used to go to school before her parents died. Now she lives near the market. Oba's chest grew heavy. She lives on the street? He asked softly. Yes, Papa, Amora answered, her face turning sad. She sleeps outside, but she still keeps her papers safe. She says learning is her friend. I like her very much. She is patient with me. Even when I get tired, she makes me smile. For a long moment, Oba said nothing. His eyes stared into the distance. How could this be? How could his daughter, the child of one of the richest men in Lagos, prefer to learn from a girl who owned nothing? He had paid the best teachers. He had filled his house with books. He had given Amora everything. Yet this poor girl, with torn clothes and bare feet, had given his daughter something he could not provide, joy in learning. Inside him, two feelings battled. On one side, he felt proud that Amora was learning something real, something that touched her heart. On the other side, he felt confused, even ashamed. How could a homeless girl succeed where his wealth had failed? Amora touched his hand. Papa, she whispered, Amina is my friend. She is poor, but she is smart. She makes me feel happy. Please don't chase her away. Oba looked at his daughter's pleading eyes. For a moment, he felt the weight of her words pressing into his heart. He realized she was not asking for toys or dresses. She was asking for kindness, for the chance to keep her friend. He nodded slowly. I will not chase her away, he said. But tell me, my daughter, do you truly learn from her? Amora smiled brightly. Yes, Papa. Today I wrote my name. Tomorrow she promised to teach me how to write your name. She says every name is like music, and when we write it, we keep the music forever. Oba's lips curved into a small smile, though his heart still carried questions. He dismissed Amora to bed, but he himself could not sleep. That night, he walked through his silent house, his footsteps echoing in the wide halls. The rooms were full of wealth, golden decorations, shining furniture, shelves stacked with books. But in that silence, the sound of his daughter's laughter with Amina felt louder than all of it. Lying in his bed, Oba stared at the ceiling. His mind spoke to him. This girl, Amina, she has nothing, yet she carries wisdom. She has no home, yet she gives comfort. She has no teacher, yet she teaches. How can this be? The next morning, Oba rose early. He went to the balcony and looked at the gate. As the sun climbed the sky, he saw her, Amina, sitting quietly by the gate with her little papers, waiting. She looked small, almost hidden in the shadow of the tall walls. Her clothes were faded, her slippers thin, but her eyes were steady, filled with quiet strength. Amora ran out to greet her, hugging her with joy. Oba watched them from above. His chest ached with questions he could no longer ignore. He had lived with pride in his riches, but now a homeless girl was teaching him something money could not. That day, when Amora went to play, Oba called one of his trusted workers. Bring the girl to me, he said. Soon, Amina stood before him. She bowed her head, nervous but calm. Her hands held the torn papers close to her chest. Oba studied her. She looked fragile, but her eyes carried fire. He asked, Child, is it true you teach my daughter? Amina nodded softly. Yes, sir. I only show her what I know. She is very smart. Where do you live? Oba asked. Near the market, sir, she replied quietly. I have no house. I sleep outside. But I try to learn every day. I want to remember what my parents taught me. Her words pierced Oba's heart. He thought of his wealth, of his grand house, of the many teachers he had paid. Yet here stood a girl with nothing, holding only scraps of paper, who had given his daughter something priceless. For the first time, Chief Oba felt something break inside his pride. He realized that wisdom and kindness were not tied to riches. They could be found even in the hands of a child who slept on the street. That night, as he watched Amora and Amina laugh together, he whispered to himself, How can a girl with nothing give my daughter so much? What does this mean for me, a man with everything? He did not yet know the answer. But he knew one thing clearly, this meeting was not by chance. It was the beginning of a lesson he had never expected to learn. The evening sky glowed with shades of orange and purple as the sun sank behind the tall buildings of Lagos. Chief Oba stepped out of his house quietly, his footsteps soft against the ground. His heart told him to follow the little girl, Amina. 4 days he had watched her come to the gate, teaching his daughter Amora with her torn papers and soft words. He needed to know more. Amina walked slowly down the street, holding a small piece of bread wrapped in old paper. Her clothes hung loosely on her thin frame, and her bare feet touched the dusty road. She did not notice Oba following at a distance. He stayed in the shadows, watching her carefully. When she reached a corner near the market, a group of children ran to her. Their faces were tired, their clothes torn, and their stomachs empty. Amina smiled at them as if they were family. She unwrapped her bread and broke it into small pieces. "Here," she said gently, placing the pieces in their hands. "Eat, my friends. Tomorrow will be better." The children's eyes brightened. They ate the bread quickly, their smiles wide even though the food was small. Amina did not eat a single bite. She looked at them with joy, as if their happiness was enough to fill her. Oba stood frozen, hidden in the shadows. His chest grew heavy as he watched the scene. This girl, who had almost nothing, had shared the only food she had. He thought about his own table at home, full of meat, fruits, and dishes he sometimes left untouched. He thought of the storerooms in his mansion, filled with food that often went to waste. And yet, with all his wealth, he had never done what this girl had just done. His heart whispered, how can a homeless girl be richer than a man with gold? Amina sat with the children, telling them stories to make them laugh. Her laughter rang in the air, light and free, even though she had no bed waiting for her. She spoke of hope, of kindness, of never giving up. The children listened with shining eyes, forgetting their hunger for a while. Oba felt something stir inside him. For the first time in many years, shame touched his heart. His wealth suddenly felt heavy, meaningless, compared to the richness of this girl's spirit. He had thought that being rich was about owning houses and cars, about wearing fine clothes and eating the best food. But now, watching Amina, he began to see a truth he had never understood. True richness was not in money, but in love and kindness. He thought of Amora, his daughter, who often sat lonely in the big house. He had given her everything money could buy, but had he given her the warmth of kindness, the richness of love? Perhaps that was why she found comfort in Amina. The girl gave her what gold could not. As the night grew darker, Oba turned back toward his home. His steps were slow, his heart heavy but awake. Each image of Amina sharing her bread replayed in his mind. He could not forget the look on her face when she gave away her only food. She was hungry, yet her joy came from feeding others. Inside his grand mansion, Oba walked past the long dining table filled with untouched food. He sat down heavily, staring at the plates. He could not bring himself to eat. Instead, he thought of the children laughing around Amina with crumbs in their hands. His heart ached. That night, Oba could not sleep. He lay awake, turning from side to side, hearing Amina's voice in his mind. He whispered to himself, what kind of man am I? I live with too much, yet I have given so little. This girl has nothing, yet she gives everything. The next morning, when the sun rose, Oba looked in the mirror. For the first time, he did not see just a powerful man, a wealthy man. He saw someone who was poor in the things that mattered most: love, kindness, and humility. He realized that the lesson he had seen was not for his daughter alone. It was for him as well. Day after day, he continued to watch Amina quietly. Each time, he saw the same thing. No matter how little she had, she always shared. No matter how hard her life was, she always smiled. And no matter how the world treated her, she always gave love. For the first time, Chief Oba began to ask himself deep questions. What use is wealth if it does not bring joy to others? What honor is there in riches if I cannot feed the hungry? What meaning does my success have if I cannot show kindness? The proud man of Lagos was changing, one small act of kindness at a time, shown not by the powerful, but by a homeless girl with torn papers and a heart richer than gold. Chief Oba stood at the wide doorway of his mansion, his eyes fixed on the small figure outside the gate. Amina was sitting on the ground, her torn papers pressed neatly in her hands, waiting for Amora. 4 days, Oba had watched her from a distance, but this time he did something different. He called her name softly. Amina, he said, his voice calm but firm. The girl lifted her head quickly, her eyes full of surprise. She was not used to rich men speaking to her kindly. Slowly, she stood up and walked toward him. Her bare feet hesitated at the polished tiles near the door. Come inside, Oba said. His words sounded strange to her ears. No one had ever invited her into a mansion. Amina looked at Amora, who ran happily to her and pulled her hand. Don't be afraid, Amora whispered. Father wants to know you. Together, they walked inside. Amina's eyes grew wide as she looked at the shining floors, tall walls, and glittering lights. But she did not feel proud or jealous. She only held her small papers tightly, as if they were more precious than gold. Oba asked her to sit. The elders of the family gathered in the large sitting room. Their eyes studied her quietly. She was thin, her dress worn out, her face marked with the struggles of the street. Still, she sat straight, her eyes steady and calm. Oba spoke gently. "Amina, tell us about your life." For a moment, she stayed silent. Then, with a deep breath, she began. She spoke of her parents who once cared for her with love, but sickness took them away too soon. She told them how she dropped out of school because there was no one to pay her fees. She explained how she wandered the streets, teaching herself with books she found in trash piles, and how she began teaching other children so they would not forget hope. Her voice did not tremble. She spoke with honesty and strength, as if the pain of her past had built a wall of courage inside her. The elders listened closely. Some shook their heads, others wiped their eyes. They had lived long lives, but her story touched them deeply. In her words, they saw not just a homeless girl, but a spirit stronger than many rich men. Oba sat silently, his heart heavy. Each word she spoke cut into him. He thought of his own life, his houses, his cars, his riches. He had never missed a meal, never slept on the street, never cried from hunger. Yet here was a girl who had faced all these things and still carried kindness in her heart. When she finished, the room was quiet. The elders exchanged glances, their faces soft with sorrow and respect. Amora hugged her friend tightly, proud to know someone so brave. That night, Oba could not rest. He walked through the halls of his mansion, hearing Amina's words again and again. He stood in his grand dining room, staring at the table filled with food. He looked at the paintings on the walls, the carpets on the floors, the jewels in his safe. All these things, once his pride, now looked empty. He thought of the children he had seen with Amina on the street, their faces thin with hunger. He thought of the nights she had slept in the cold, while he lay under warm blankets. His heart felt heavy with guilt. In his private room, Oba sat down and pressed his head into his hands. His family name was respected, his business was strong, and his power was great. Yet he had never used it to heal the wounds around him. What good was wealth, if it was only for himself? He stood up suddenly, his eyes burning with a new fire. He knew what he had to do. It was not a small act, not a token of kindness. It would be a decision that would change his life and the lives of many others. The next morning, he gathered his family. The elders sat with questioning faces. His relatives looked at him with curiosity. Amora sat beside Amina, holding her hand tightly. Oba cleared his throat and spoke with a steady voice. "I have made a decision." The room grew silent. Every eye was on him. He looked at Amina and then back at his family. "This girl has opened my eyes. She has shown me that riches are not in money or gold, but in love, kindness, and courage. From today, our home will not only be for us. It will be a place for those who have none. We will help children like Amina, give them food, shelter, and school. No child should sleep hungry while we live in comfort." The elders gasped softly. His relatives exchanged shocked glances. They could not believe what they were hearing. Oba was known for his pride and strict ways. For him to speak such words was beyond imagination. But his voice did not shake. His eyes shone with certainty. "This is my decision," he said firmly. "From this night forward, our wealth will serve a greater purpose. It will bring light where there is darkness." Amina's eyes filled with tears. She had not expected such words from the great Chief Oba. Amara squeezed her hand, smiling with joy. The family was stunned, their hearts moved in ways they could not explain. For the first time, they saw not just the powerful man of Lagos, but a man ready to change the meaning of his life. And so, that night, Chief Oba's decision shocked everyone, not because he had wealth, but because he had finally chosen to use it with a heart full of love. Chief Oba's words had shaken his family and surprised the whole community. People whispered about his bold promise, unsure if he would truly act on it. But Oba was not a man of empty speeches. From the very next day, he began to put his decision into action. He called Amina into his study, a room filled with books, maps, and paintings. She stood at the door, still shy in the presence of such wealth. Oba gestured for her to come closer. "Amina," he said softly, "from today, you are not just a guest in this house. You are part of this family. I will sponsor your education. You will go back to school and finish what life tried to take away from you." Amina's eyes grew wide with disbelief. For years, she had dreamed of returning to school but had buried that dream under hunger and survival. Now, hearing Oba's promise, she felt tears rise in her eyes. She knelt down and whispered, "Thank you, Chief. I will not waste this chance. Oba lifted her gently to her feet. Do not thank me, he said. You earned this with your courage. You taught my daughter and, without knowing it, you taught me too. Soon, the mansion was filled with new routines. Every morning, Amora and Amina studied together. Amina, now dressed in clean clothes and holding real books, guided Amora with patience and love. The workers in the house watched with wonder. To see the once homeless girl now teaching inside the grand house was something they never thought possible. But Oba did not stop there. He began visiting schools in Lagos, meeting teachers and headmasters. He asked about children who could not afford fees, children forced to stay on the streets. With his wealth, he started a program that gave scholarships, school uniforms, and food to those who needed them most. At first, people doubted his intentions. Some thought it was only to gain praise, others believed it would end quickly. But as the weeks turned into months, they saw his sincerity. Dozens of children who once wandered the streets now sat in classrooms, their hands lifted with excitement as they answered lessons. Amina herself was the brightest star of this new chapter. She returned to school with determination. Her teachers quickly saw her talent and discipline. She excelled in her studies, becoming a source of inspiration to other students. When she spoke, she often said, "Kindness is a light that never dies, even in the darkest night." Oba watched her grow with pride. Every evening, he would walk into the study to find Amora laughing as Amina explained a story or solved a problem. He often stood quietly at the door, remembering the first time he had seen Amina with her torn papers at the gate. The memory humbled him, reminding him of how far they had all come. The elders of Oba's family, once doubtful, now praised his decision. They said, "A house may be large, but it becomes greater when its doors are open to others." Relatives who once chased only money began to think differently. They saw that respect and love from the people were far more valuable than gold. In the city, Oba's name spread with new honor. He was no longer spoken of only as a rich man, but as a leader with a heart. Journalists wrote about the scholarship program. Parents came to thank him, tears in their eyes. Children waved when they saw him on the street, calling out, "Baba Oba," with joy. But Oba always gave the credit to Amina. Whenever people praised him, he raised his hand and said, "Do not look at me. Look at the girl who reminded me of true wealth." It was Amina who opened my eyes. Years passed, and Amina grew into a strong young woman. She not only completed her education but also became a teacher herself. She stood in classrooms filled with eager children, sharing her knowledge with the same kindness she once showed Amora at the garden gate. Her story spread beyond Lagos, inspiring many across the country. Amora, too, grew into a wise young lady, always remembering the friend who had taught her first lessons with scraps of paper. She often said, "Amina taught me words, but she also taught me how to love and share." The city changed slowly. More wealthy families began to copy Oba's example, opening their homes and wallets to help the poor. The streets that once carried hungry children now carried laughter and books. The seeds Oba planted through Amina grew into a forest of hope. One evening, during a celebration at the town square, Oba stood before the people. Children danced and sang songs of thanks. Parents clapped with joy. The air was filled with happiness. Oba raised his hand and spoke. "My friends, wealth is empty without kindness. Amina showed me that money alone means nothing. It is what we do with it that gives it value. True wealth is not in houses or cars. True wealth is in the love we share, the lives we lift, and the hope we give to others." The crowd cheered, their hearts touched by his words. Amina, standing beside Amora, smiled proudly. She knew her journey from the street to the mansion had not only changed her life but had also changed the lives of many others. That night, as the celebration ended, Oba sat quietly with his daughter and Amina. He looked at the stars above and whispered to himself, "I once thought I had everything. Now I know the truth. Wealth without kindness is an empty shell. But with kindness, even the smallest coin can shine brighter than gold." The people of Lagos never forgot the lesson. They carried it in their hearts, passing it on to their children and grandchildren. And long after, the story of a rich man, his lonely daughter, and a homeless girl who taught them the meaning of wealth lived on in the city's memory.